The Confederacy of Independent Systems served as the Sith's paper tiger, a mere distraction for the Jedi that would allow them to take over the galaxy. Darth Sidious expertly used the CIS to fulfill his plans, casting it as an existential threat to the Republic and using it to terrify the galaxy into accepting his empire. The CIS was definitely a powerful faction, but it was hamstrung by the fact that it was supposed to lose from the very beginning. But what if it wasn't? What if the Clone Wars were a legitimate conflict and the CIS played for keeps? First things first, we should clarify exactly how much we're changing the scenario here. We're going to be taking the galaxy as it was right after the Battle of Geonosis, and essentially removing Dooku and Palpatine being Sith from the equation. Prior elements of the Sith Grand Plan, most notably the Grand Army of the Republic, will still be in place. The only change is that once the war starts, Palpatine and Dooku go at it for real, with no Sithy ulterior moves. It's hard to understate how much easier this would make things for the Confederacy. The Sith handicapped the CIS a whole lot, and if they hadn't, the Clone Wars would have gone much differently. Many things, however, would have remained the same. The droid models used by the CIS droid army were not the result of Sith handicapping, for example, but rather the strategic philosophy of the Separatist Council, and so it would remain unchanged. The same would be true for the Separatist Council's dominance over the Separatist Parliament and the dominance of the military over both parties. By and large, the CIS military would actually have remained unchanged. As we mentioned earlier, the general makeup of the Navy and the droid army was a result of genuine strategic philosophy, not Sith manipulation. What would have changed was quantity. The Confederacy kept vast numbers of battle droids in reserve on Dooku's orders, but in this timeline they surely would have been unleashed in full force. The results of this would be simple. They would increase the Confederacy's numbers advantage even further, which would be bad news for the Republic. The more dramatic changes would have been the makeup of CIS military leadership and the strategies they came up with. The Sith actually went out of their way to nerf CIS leadership fairly early in the war, ensuring that brilliant leaders like Sev'rance and Commander Morai died in earlier battles. Obviously, that wouldn't happen in this timeline, which would have left the CIS with a group of strategic geniuses to rival the Republic's. They did well enough with General Grievous and Admiral Trench, but with Sev'rance, Morai, Asajj Ventress, and Admiral Pause Tonith added back into the mix, they would have done much better. Most importantly, the Confederacy's strategic approach to the Clone Wars would have been radically different, and this will be the bulk of what we cover today. We're going to be breaking this section up by looking at two different tactical goals for the CIS to have pursued. The first will assume that the CIS just wanted what they claimed to have wanted, to be able to secede and exist separately from the Republic. The second will assume that this was just propaganda and that the CIS was instead trying to destroy the Republic, as the Republic claimed. Let's start by taking the Separatists on their word. If the Confederacy's goal was independence, then it likely would have exploited the advantage the stateless strategy gave them to the fullest. To a degree, this is how the CIS military actually operated. Most of their fleets and armies were maintained in the middle of nowhere, making them impossible for the Republic to track down or destroy. For most of the Clone Wars, the Republic faced a serious dilemma. They could either spend all their resources trying to fruitlessly hunt down the CIS military, leaving their systems unguarded and vulnerable, or they could defend their core territory, allowing their enemies to grow stronger out in the void. The Republic ultimately outgrew this dilemma, harnessing its superior industrial capabilities and doing both at once. But that was only possible because the Confederacy was being held back. If the CIS was playing for keeps, no amount of industrialization could have saved the Republic from an endless wave of surgical strikes. The surgical strike was one of the Confederacy's favorite tactics during the Clone Wars. They would launch surprise attacks deep in Republic territory, with the aim being to disrupt rather than to capture. One of the best examples of this strategy was Sev'rance Tan's attack on Sarapin during the first weeks of the war. Sarapin, a core world that exported massive amounts of energy to its neighbors, played a role in powering the heart of the Republic, and when Tan captured it and took its generators offline, the core suffered a wave of blackouts. The Republic quickly recaptured Sarapin, but the damage had been done. The citizens of the core world had been terrified by the assault, and they no longer felt secure. All of the Confederacy's biggest strikes during the Clone Wars worked the same way. The Battle of Anaxis, the Battle of Coruscant, and many others were isolated strikes as well. And perhaps the most insightful example of this strategy was Operation Dirge's Lance. In that campaign, General Grievous cut a bloody swath through the core worlds, shattering Republic defensive lines and committing war crimes that ranged from biological warfare to planetary annihilation, all to crush the spirit of the Republic. If the Confederacy wasn't beholden to the will of the Sith, Operation Dirge's Lance would only have been the beginning. Worlds that were staunchly opposed to separatism likely would have met the same fate as Humbarine, the world that General Grievous burned to the ground during Dirge's Lance. Essentially, the Separatists would have bullied the Republic into letting them leave, and their method of bullying would have involved genocide. The last and greatest of these campaigns would likely have been directed at Coruscant, and this time there would have been no kidnapping Palpatine and waiting for the Jedi to rescue him. If General Grievous wasn't acting according to Sith plans at Coruscant, he probably would have given much of the planet the Humbarine treatment. In a sense, he did so in the main timeline as well. To cause chaos during the Battle of Coruscant, he ordered millions of vulture droids to fly themselves into buildings and commuter trains, providing cover for his kidnapping of the Supreme Chancellor. If he had his way, he probably would have blasted swaths of the city to dust, particularly the Jedi Temple, the Senate building, and the Senate Executive Annex. He most certainly would have killed Palpatine, and in all honesty, that's all the Confederacy needed to do to win the Clone Wars anyway. If Palpatine died, the Senate would have doubtlessly have caved to the Confederacy's demands. But what if the Confederacy wanted more than separation? What if they wanted to make the Republic pay for long millennia of injustice? If the Sith weren't running the show, the Seppies would have been more than capable of doing so. Their massive armies of droids would have been more than enough to overwhelm the Republic, and with some of the greatest tactical minds in the galaxy at the Confederacy's disposal, these Clone Wars would have had the potential to see the Republic ground to dust. The Confederacy would have begun such a campaign by taking advantage of how many fronts it had with the Republic. The CIS was a collection of pockets of space scattered across the remnants of the Republic, with hundreds of vectors to launch assaults along. With trillions upon trillions of droids, 4 times as many warships as the Republic, and so many tactical geniuses, the CIS could have launched assaults along several corridors at once. In this manner, they could have shattered the Republic's grip on the loyalist parts of the Rim. In this scenario, we could have seen General Grievous lay waste to Eriadu, bringing the whole Rim trade route under Separatist control. We could have seen Dirge, Sev'rance Tarn, and Asajj Ventress sweep across the new territories, exploiting the long chain of unbroken supply lines in the Confederacy's northern enclave. We could have seen Trench storm Corward up the Corellian Run, and Mirai laying claim to the industrial worlds of the Slice. First, the Republic's outlying territories would be thrown into chaos, and then its industrial base would have been utterly destroyed or seized for Separatist use. Even with the help of the Jedi, the Grand Army of the Republic simply wouldn't have been able to hold the line against such an assault. They could win a few scattered victories, but these would prove insignificant in short order. Once the rest of the industrial worlds in the Slice fell, it would have been over for the Republic. The military would have retreated back to the Corran colonies, desperately trying to stem the Separatist tide. We know this because it happened twice before. The Republic did the same thing during the Jedi Civil War, and at the start of the Republic Dark Age, during the New Sith Wars. In both cases, the Republic only survived thanks to the self-destructive nature of the Sith. But that wouldn't have factored in this time. The Confederacy would have succeeded where the Sith have failed, starting with an all-out assault on the defenses of the core. Inevitably, these defenses would have been buckled, and it's likely we would have seen General Grievous lay waste to the whole region, not just a few scattered worlds as he did during Operation Dirge's Lance. The core would have been left in ruins, and many of its worlds likely would have been given the Humbarine treatment. The Confederacy would do to the core worlds what the core worlds had done to the Rim for millennia. But that's just our take on the matter. What's yours? Do you think things would have gone differently? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments below.